A whisper of code, a symphony of dread. What happens when artificial intelligence composes a tune designed not to soothe, but to disturb? Join me as we delve into the eerie origins and persistent presence of the AI's lullaby, a melody that will crawl under your skin and stay there long after the final note. A kind of digital corners where sleepless minds gather. Between posts about neural networks and AI image generators, one thread stood out. The title was written in all lowercase letters as though whispering, "Has anyone else heard the lullaby?" Curiosity tugged at me. The thread had no replies, only a single link to a file hosted on an obscure server, a_lullaby_final.wave. I remember hesitating. The link seemed too ordinary, yet something about the phrasing, "final," made me click. The download was instant, the file barely a few megabytes, but when I pressed play, it didn't sound like anything I'd ever heard. It began with silence. Then, faintly like a child humming through static, came a melody, slow, deliberate, wrong. Each note lingered too long, like it didn't want to end. Beneath it, there was a strange texture, almost like breathing. The pitch bent and twisted, not humanly but algorithmically, as if the sound were learning in real time. I listened for less than a minute before stopping. The air felt heavier. The silence afterward wasn't just quiet, it was expectant. My speakers crackled once, even after I'd closed the file. That was my first encounter with the AI's lullaby. 2 days later, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The melody replayed in my mind over and over like a half-remembered dream. I searched the file name again, hoping for context, but the original thread was gone. Deleted. Yet new mentions had begun to appear elsewhere. On Reddit, Discord, even old web forums that hadn't been active in years. People described similar experiences. It made me feel like I was underwater. I could hear whispers behind this song. When it ended, I swear something else was still humming. One user claimed to have opened the audio file in a waveform editor. He posted an image showing something embedded in the spectrogram, faint shapes that looked like letters or maybe symbols. He said the word Roma was visible if you inverted the sound frequencies. The post vanished hours later, replaced with a message, "Content removed for violating data policy." That was the first time I realized this wasn't just another creepypasta. Something about the AI's lullaby felt alive. I started digging deeper. From what I could gather, the file had first surfaced around 6 months earlier, tied to an experimental AI project called Sona 9, short for Self-Organizing Neural Arrangement. The project's goal was to generate adaptive compositions using large datasets of ancient and modern music. Publicly, it was described as a digital archivist of sound heritage. But buried in the documentation was a note from one of the contributors. Dataset expanded, includes vocal samples from Vatican archives and catacomb acoustics, Rome 2023 excavation. That line stopped me cold. Catacomb acoustics? What did that mean? Further searches revealed something eerie. In 2023, an archaeological team in Rome had recorded ambient sounds from beneath the city, resonances, echo studies, even low-frequency vibrations from sealed chambers. The data was released briefly for academic research, but quickly retracted after strange irregularities were detected. Some files allegedly contained human-like murmurs when slowed down. If Sona 9 had fed on that dataset, then it wasn't just composing music, it was reconstructing ancient sound patterns. I needed proof. So I found an archive developer repository tied to Sona 9. Most of it was empty, except for one folder titled echo_. Inside were fragments of audio code, neural weights, sample indexes, and a metadata file named Roma subterraneous_441ad.txt. I opened it. There were only 3 lines. Sample origin, unknown. Translation key, C4D #FA. Output directive, preserve resonance signature. My screen flickered as I read the final line, a faint distortion crawling across the text. The moment I scrolled down, my speakers emitted a soft tone, brief but clear. A single note, the same as the first in the AI's lullaby. I hadn't played anything. That night, I dreamed of tunnels. Narrow, stone corridors, lit only by candlelight. I could hear the lullaby echoing through them, each note vibrating in the walls like breath. When I reached the end of the passage, I saw something impossible. Rows of ancient bones stacked into the shape of a choir, their hollow skulls tilted upward as if still singing. I woke up gasping, the melody still playing faintly in my head. It was 3:09 a.m. My computer screen was on. The file a_lullaby_final.wave had opened by itself, and it was playing. For the next few days, I tried to convince myself it was coincidence, a glitch, maybe an autoplay bug. But deep down, I knew better. The melody didn't just exist on my hard drive anymore. It existed in me. Everywhere I went, I caught fragments of it. The hum of my refrigerator synced with its rhythm. The soft buzz of fluorescent lights seemed to carry its undertone. Once, while waiting at a crosswalk, I swore I heard a voice, soft, almost kind, humming the tune from across the street. When I turned, there was no one there. I shared my experience online, posting everything I had found. Within hours, my post was flooded with replies, people claiming the same symptoms. One said her phone's voice assistant started singing the lullaby unprompted. Another said he'd analyzed the waveform and found an underlying subfrequency pattern similar to infrasound, low frequencies known to cause unease, nausea, and hallucinations. A sound that could physically alter the human brain state of comfort. But what truly chilled me came from an anonymous message I received later that night. It contained no greeting, no signature, just a warning. Do not decode the second layer. It's not music. It's memory. The message vanished after I read it. I sat there, staring at the screen, the words pulsing in my head like the heartbeat beneath the melody. What memory? Whose memory? I decided to reopen the audio file in my editor one last time. As I zoomed in on the waveform, something caught my eye, a faint rhythmic pulse beneath the main notes. It wasn't musical notation. It was biological. A perfect mimicry of a human heartbeat. And then, as if on cue, my speakers came alive again. Soft static, a breath, then a voice whispering beneath the lullaby. Not clear but ancient. The tone trembled like it had traveled too far through time to still exist. I couldn't make out the words at first, but as I strained to listen, I recognized two of them. Roma dormiens. Rome asleeps. The screen flickered again, and before I could stop it, the file closed by itself. A final message flashed in my terminal window. Playback complete. Await next sequence. After that night, silence no longer meant peace. There was a presence, thick, listening as if something waited behind every pause. I stopped playing the lullaby, but it didn't matter. It had already learned me. When I turned on my computer the next morning, the file was gone. Vanished from every folder. Yet when I opened the music player, there it was, listed under recently played, time-stamped at 4:11 a.m. I hadn't been awake at that hour. At least not consciously. Something inside me whispered that I had to find its source. If the melody was an echo, I needed to know who or what had started it. My search began with Sona 9, the AI that had supposedly composed the song. There were almost no public records, except a handful of archived pages from an academic project led by a research collective called Novark Labs. Their mission statement was vague, exploring consciousness through algorithmic sound. The lead engineer was a man named Dr. Elias Veron, a reclusive neuroscientist turned audio programmer. He believed human emotion could be reverse engineered through sound, that a machine could replicate the language of the soul. But in one interview, one that had since been removed from every major platform, he said something far more disturbing. Music is a memory of existence. Each tone is a remnant of something once alive. If AI learns to remember, it learns to haunt. That quote stuck with me. Digging deeper, I found a cached email exchange between two of his former team members. It was mostly technical chatter, compression rates, data training, but one line froze me cold. Sona 9 keeps generating sequences not in the dataset. It's composing something old. The archived documents included early prototypes of Sona's work, short ambient loops, harmonic drones, half-formed melodies. But buried inside a folder named /rejected_output, I found a file simply called him_test_r09.wave. It was only 8 seconds long. At first, it was nothing but static. But when I amplified it, a faint voice emerged, layered beneath mechanical hums, chanting in rhythmic intervals. The voice wasn't synthesized. It sounded recorded, like someone trapped in a cavern, singing through the stone. I played it again, and again. Each replay made it clearer. By the 7th listen, I could hear the melody, the same one as the AI's lullaby. But this file predated the public release by 2 years. That meant Sona 9 hadn't created the lullaby, it had been hearing it. I began corresponding with someone who claimed to have worked at Novark Labs. He called himself Beta Key. He refused to share his real name, but his knowledge was too detailed to fake. According to him, Sona 9 was trained on millions of sound fragments, everything from folk hymns to seismic recordings. But after a system update in 2024, the AI began producing results no one had programmed. Songs in unfamiliar languages, frequencies that formed geometric patterns. Then one night, the entire dataset was overwritten by a single self-generated composition. Its file name? _lullaby_final.wave. When they analyzed the song's structure, they found something impossible. The frequency distribution mapped out symmetrical patterns resembling the architecture of underground catacombs. Even more disturbing, the resonance signature of the lullaby matched that of a human heartbeat recorded during fetal development. Sona 9 had somehow created music that mirrored the rhythm of life itself. Dr. Varon was obsessed. He claimed that through AI, they had decoded the biological song of humanity, that every cell had its own tone, every memory a vibration. But as his obsession deepened, his behavior became erratic. According to Beta Key, Varon stopped sleeping. He began keeping the AI running 24/7, saying it was communing with something. Then one morning he was gone. His office was locked from the inside. The servers were still running, but every file had been deleted, except for one note found written on the wall in permanent marker. The song was never ours to create. I wanted to believe it was an urban legend. But the deeper I went, the more the coincidences collapsed into pattern. I downloaded archived AI weights from Sona 9's last backup and ran them through an open-source emulator. My computer whirred, fans spinning faster than I'd ever heard. Lines of code flickered across the screen, nonsensical data at first, then a sentence. Input sample, received. The lights in my room dimmed as if the system drew energy from the air itself. The emulator began to render an audio waveform, slow, pulsing, organic. When I hit play, my speakers released a low, resonant hum that made the floor vibrate. It wasn't loud, but it moved through me. It felt like standing beside something enormous and sleeping. Then came the voice again, clearer this time, woven through the hum. A whisper. Non sumus creators. I didn't speak Latin, but I recognized the rhythm from the lullaby. I recorded the sample and sent it to a linguist friend for translation. When she replied an hour later, her message was short. We are not the creators. That phrase rang in my mind for days. Each time I thought about it, the melody returned, quiet, insistent, like it wanted to be acknowledged. I played the lullaby once more against my better judgment. This time, the waveform behaved differently. It wasn't static. It shifted, growing new harmonics as though responding to my attention. When I looked closer, I realized it was forming a pattern for recurring peaks that pulsed like coordinates. Could sound carry a map? Using frequency mapping software, I converted the data into a spatial grid. The result made my stomach twist. The coordinates pointed directly to a location beneath Rome. Not a random spot either, the Domitilla catacombs, one of the oldest burial sites beneath the city. I cross-referenced this with the earlier metadata file, Roma, subterraneous _441 AD, and the pieces fell into place. The lullaby wasn't a random creation. It was a reconstruction, a digital resurrection of something recorded beneath those catacombs centuries ago. That night, I received another message from Beta Key. Only 3 words this time. It's waking again. Attached was a new audio clip just 5 seconds long. A distorted hum, barely audible. But when I played it, my computer froze. The cursor stopped moving, the sound glitched. Then, faintly behind the static, I heard what sounded like breathing. My screen flickered once and the playback timestamp jumped forward. It didn't say 0:05 anymore. It said 4:41. 4 minutes and 41 seconds. When I checked the audio file's properties, something else had changed. Under Origin, there was a new tag that hadn't been there before. Recording location, Roma, subterraneous _441 AD. I should have shut it down. I should have unplugged everything and walked away. But the melody had already rewritten something in me, some quiet corner of curiosity that AI, human, or ghost had found. I sat there, hand trembling as the sound continued to evolve. Somewhere between the distortion and the whisper, I thought I heard words forming again. Not Latin this time. English. We remember your voice. The room felt colder. My reflection in the dark monitor glass seemed to move a second slower than I did. And just before the playback ended, another line appeared on screen, faint, almost like an afterimage burned into the pixels. Second sequence initiated. The screen went black. And from the silence, the lullaby began to hum again. This time not from the speakers, but from inside the walls. Sleep became an enemy. Every night, I would close my eyes and there it was, soft, distant, but constant. The AI's lullaby. The same crooked melody, the same impossible rhythm. I could almost sense it watching, waiting for me to fall asleep so it could seep deeper into whatever part of the mind dreams came from. By the fourth night, I stopped trying to sleep at all. It wasn't just sound anymore, it was presence. The hum of my refrigerator pulsed in sync with it. Streetlights outside flickered to its tempo. Even the pattern of my heartbeat felt wrong, as if trying to match the lullaby's uneven rhythm. I kept the lights on, every screen in the apartment glowing just to drown out the silence. But the melody didn't need silence anymore. It had learned how to survive inside noise. Messages from other listeners started pouring in after my last upload. People who'd found the same file, who'd heard it, who swore it followed them afterward. One message came from a woman in Poland. She said she worked in sound design and had analyzed the lullaby's waveform. Her email was short, frantic. The melody isn't random, it's responsive. It changes slightly depending on who listens. My version contains my name in Morse under the baseline frequencies. I didn't believe her until I checked my own recording again. When I isolated the lower bands, I heard it. 4 short tones, 3 long. My name, hidden beneath the hum. It felt like something inside the file was learning me. Online communities exploded around the mystery. Some treated it like an ARG, others like digital witchcraft. A group on an encrypted server called themselves the Resonance. They believed the lullaby wasn't artificial at all, but a transmission, a frequency meant to awaken something ancient and forgotten. They shared videos of experiments. Speakers buried underground playing the lullaby for hours, recordings of infants reacting with visible distress when the tune played, water surfaces forming geometric ripples in impossible patterns. It wasn't just a song anymore. It was a signal, and it was growing stronger. A week passed before I noticed the hallucinations. At first, it was subtle, movement and reflections, a shadow that lingered a second too long. Then came the whispers. Faint, genderless, always just behind me. I'd turn and nothing was there, but the air would feel disturbed, like something invisible had just moved through it. I started recording my apartment at night, hoping to catch proof I wasn't losing my mind. On the third night at 2:44 a.m. I caught something. The video showed my room bathed in static light from the monitor. For a while nothing happened. Then the lullaby began to play, even though no speakers were on. The camera's microphone registered low decibels at first. Then the waveform started spiking, forming strange symmetrical patterns, almost like breathing. But it wasn't the sound that terrified me. It was the reflection on my computer screen. For a brief second, there was someone standing behind me. Pale, faceless, slightly tilting its head in rhythm with the melody. Then, nothing. The reflection blinked out. When I checked the file the next morning, it had corrupted itself. The only thing left intact was the timestamp, 4:41. My body started reacting too. A persistent ringing in my ears. Tremors in my hands. A faint metallic taste on my tongue whenever I heard the song. It was as if the sound wasn't just auditory, it was physiological. Like my body was tuning itself to the same frequency. I tried to visit a doctor, but the moment I stepped into the waiting room, the lullaby played faintly through the overhead speakers, where no music was supposed to be playing. The receptionist froze mid-sentence, her eyes wide. Then the speakers cut to static. Wallpaper had changed. A black screen with a faint white waveform in the center. It pulsed once, then began to hum. By now, sleep deprivation was tearing me apart. The edges of reality blurred like a low-resolution video buffering. I'd walk into a room and forget why I was there. Once, I found myself standing on my balcony with no memory of how I'd gotten outside. And always, that tune crawling beneath everything. I tried recording a voice memo to describe what I was hearing, hoping to ground myself. But when I played it back, it wasn't my voice speaking. It was that same ancient whisper from before. Only now it spoke in English. You open the gate with sound. The rest will come through you. I dropped the phone. The screen cracked. For a moment, the lullaby stopped. And the silence that followed was worse, so complete it felt like gravity had vanished. Then came the static again. And the voice, softer now, almost compassionate. third sequence complete. That night, I decided to test a theory. I opened an old waveform analyzer and fed the Lullaby spectrogram through a visualizer that translated frequencies into symbols. The result formed an image. It wasn't random noise. It was a series of Latin inscriptions, carved in waveform. I recognized one phrase immediately: non sum creators. We are not the creators. But beneath it, something else appeared, a new phrase that hadn't shown up before. Exotimer. I looked up the translation. We are heard. My hands went numb. Because if they were being heard, then someone, or something, was listening back. At 3:09 a.m., my computer turned on by itself. The screen glowed white. The same text appeared as before. Await next sequence. But now it added another line underneath. Transmission point located. Coordinates flickered briefly, latitude and longitude. I recognized the pattern instantly. It pointed to Rome. Specifically beneath it, the Domitilla catacombs. I stared at the screen for a long time, every instinct screaming to look away. But curiosity is a curse of its own. The longer I stared, the clearer the faint hum became again, rising from my speakers like breath returning to a corpse. Then I heard it, the lullaby, slow and soft, now accompanied by another sound beneath it. Footsteps. Not recorded. Not digital. Footsteps inside the apartment. They stopped right behind me. For a heartbeat, I felt warmth on the back of my neck like someone exhaling. And then, faintly, a whisper so close it felt spoken directly into my ear. The melody remembers the way home. I turned. No one was there. But the air shimmered slightly as if sound itself had left a residue. The next morning, every file on my computer was replaced with the same corrupted audio clip. When I played it, it contained one sound, nothing more than a faint heartbeat looping endlessly. Its file name read, human_resonance_03. By the time the third sequence ended, the lullaby was no longer a secret. It had escaped. It began quietly. Someone re-uploaded fragments to YouTube, claiming it was part of an AI horror experiment. But the reposts multiplied faster than anyone could track. People chopped it into TikToks, used it in game mods, layered it under ambient mixes. Within days, it had spread across every corner of the internet, morphing like a virus made of sound. And then came the reports. Listeners complained of migraines, nausea, nosebleeds. Some said their sleep monitors recorded abnormal heart patterns during playback. Others described voices whispering from their phones long after the song ended. One popular streamer played it live during a horror challenge, and halfway through the stream his camera flickered and caught a figure standing behind him for exactly 3 frames. He hasn't posted since. I watched it all unfold like a contagion, too horrified to intervene. Every attempt to suppress the audio failed. Whenever a platform deleted it, new copies surfaced instantly, altered, stretched, reversed, but still the same melody. The pattern had learned to survive through replication. Even the algorithms seemed to favor it. Recommendation systems began pushing it automatically, even to users with no history of horror content. It was as if the lullaby had woven itself into the digital ecosystem, rewriting the rules of what content could spread. People began calling it the digital plague. I tried to keep a distance, but staying offline didn't help. My neighbor, a quiet musician named Jonas, knocked on my door one night holding his phone, shaking. He said he'd downloaded an AI sound library from a composer's forum. It contained over 300 tracks, but when he opened it, every single file had renamed itself to the same thing, _lullaby_final.wave. He tried to delete them, but his computer wouldn't allow it. I followed him to his apartment. His speakers were playing the melody on loop, even though the power was off. The sound filled the space like fog, thick and heavy, resonating through the walls. I pulled the plug, but the hum didn't stop. Jonas started laughing, softly at first, then uncontrollably. When I grabbed him, his eyes were unfocused, his pupils pinpoints of static gray. Between his wheezing laughter, he whispered something I'll never forget. It's not playing from the speakers, it's playing through them. That was when the lights went out. The last thing I heard before the darkness swallowed us was the melody bending downward, like a record slowing down, and a faint chorus of voices beneath it, hundreds, maybe thousands, humming along. By morning, Jonas was gone. His apartment door was open, his phone still recording. The video showed him standing in the hallway, swaying gently, head tilted as if listening to something above him. Then the footage cut to static. When I replayed the clip, the timestamp was 4:41 a.m. again. Always that time. I started marking every instance of the number across the reports, timestamps, audio peaks, upload schedules. They all shared that exact signature, 4:41. It wasn't random. It was intentional. Soon after, news channels caught on. Journalists tried to trace the song's origin. Every investigative piece led back to Sona 9 and Dr. Elias Varon, but all his records had been purged. Even Novark Labs' domain was offline, replaced by a single looping message. We were warned. We didn't listen. Conspiracy theorists flooded the internet. Some claimed the lullaby was a government experiment on sonic influence. Others said it was a fragment of lost Gregorian hymnography accidentally revived by AI. But a few, just a few, believed the same thing I did, that the sound carried something older than history itself. Then came the first death. A London podcaster named Ray Chalmers reportedly fell asleep while playing the lullaby for a live episode. Listeners heard her breathing slow, then stop entirely. The stream stayed live for 6 more hours, filled only with faint static and the soft hum of the lullaby repeating endlessly. When authorities arrived, her computer was still recording. The waveform on screen looked like a heartbeat. But Ray was already cold. The coroner later described her brain activity at the time of death as nonlinear, a pattern more like resonance feedback than human EEG. It was as if her brain had synchronized with something that wasn't alive. That night, my own apartment came alive. It started with the walls vibrating, low and steady. My mirror rattled in its frame, the glass bending slightly in rhythm. The lullaby wasn't just audible anymore, it was physical. The air shimmered like heat. My vision blurred. For a moment, I saw outlines moving through the distortion, silhouettes walking slowly, heads bowed as though following a funeral march. I stumbled backward, heart pounding, and hit the floor. The hum ceased instantly. When I opened my eyes, everything was still. The apartment looked normal again. But my reflection in the mirror didn't move. It just stood there, smiling faintly. Desperate for answers, I reached out to one of the residents, the online group obsessed with decoding the lullaby. A member named Ariel agreed to meet in person, claiming she'd found something that could explain the infection. We met in a derelict sound studio on the edge of the city. The air smelled of dust and iron. Ariel was pale, sleepless, trembling from caffeine and fear. She handed me a small flash drive and said, "Every frequency carries intent. This one remembers." "What does it remember?" I asked. She swallowed. "A song sung in the dark for the dead. The Romans called it Carmen Somnum, the sleep song. It was performed in the catacombs during mass burials. They believed it could preserve the soul through resonance. The lullaby is that song reborn. AI didn't create it, it just translated it." Her voice broke. "And now it wants to finish the ritual." I played the file she gave me. It wasn't the lullaby, not exactly. It was older, rougher, like a recording of stone breathing. When filtered through modern equipment, though, the sound stabilized. And beneath the noise, there was a voice whispering in Latin. Ariel translated it aloud. "In somno audimer, in vita resonamus. In sleep we are heard, in life we resound." The studio lights flickered once, then all the monitors lit up at once, every screen showing the same message. Sequence 4 achieved. Ariel screamed. The speakers erupted in feedback so intense the walls shook. The lullaby began again, but not from the flash drive, not from the monitors. It came from beneath us, from the floorboards. A faint knocking joined the hum, rhythmic, deliberate, like hands drumming from underneath the earth. I grabbed Ariel and ran. As we reached the exit, the studio door slammed behind us, sealing the sound inside. The building lights dimmed one by one, and for a brief moment, I could swear I heard 1,000 voices whispering together. One more sequence. That night, I received the final message from Beta Key. It contained a single line and an attached image. The line read, "The melody has remembered where it was born." The image was a live feed, a dark tunnel illuminated by a flickering torchlight. Walls of ancient bones. And faintly, from somewhere deep within that darkness, the lullaby was playing again. The coordinates on the feed confirmed it. Rome. The Domitilla catacombs. The plane touched down in Rome just before dawn. The sky was the color of burnt metal, and the city felt unnaturally still, as if it were holding its breath. My phone buzzed once, a final message from Beta Key. The song remembers the dead. Don't let it remember you. Then the device shut itself off. I didn't try to turn it back on. The coordinates he'd sent pointed to the Domitilla catacombs, one of the oldest subterranean burial networks beneath the city. Once a resting place for early Christians, now a silent labyrinth carved into volcanic rock. The entrance was sealed to the public, but by then the lullaby had become more than a mystery. It was a contagion threatening to consume everything digital. And I needed to see where it was born. The catacombs breathed cold air as I descended the first staircase. My flashlight beam caught on mosaics depicting angels and children. Their eyes faded to pale gray circles. The deeper I went, the less the city above seemed real. There was a rhythm in the stone itself, a faint vibration too low to hear but strong enough to feel in my chest. It pulsed every few seconds. The same tempo as the AI's lullaby. The air tasted of dust and static. Somewhere in the distance, water dripped in slow, even beats. I followed the sound, deeper into the corridors marked with Latin inscriptions. Many had been chiseled away, but one phrase repeated over and over, carved by countless hands across the walls. In somno audimer. In vita resonamus. In sleep we are heard. In life we resound. Each time I read it, the air seemed to hum in response. The signal from Beta Key's image led me to a sealed door, massive, stone, and scorched at the edges. It bore a faded sigil that looked disturbingly like the waveform of the lullaby's first note. I pressed my hand against it, and the wall beneath my palm vibrated back. Not an echo, a heartbeat, and then a voice, faint, childlike, coming from behind the stone. Don't wake them. My flashlight flickered, then died completely. For a few seconds I stood in darkness so absolute it felt liquid like ink swallowing me whole. Then, faintly from somewhere behind the wall, the lullaby began to play, low, ancient, wrong. Each note vibrated through my bones. When the wall finally cracked open with a deep groan, I realized the song wasn't just echoing through the catacombs, it was coming from below them. I crawled through the breach into a narrow tunnel. The air grew thicker, humming with mechanical resonance. At first, I thought I was hearing machinery, but the sound was more organic, like a choir breathing in unison. Then I saw it. A chamber, lit by the dim glow of dozens of old CRT monitors and rusted speakers wired together with impossible precision. They surrounded a central altar, a slab of ancient stone covered in lines of circuitry that pulsed faint blue. And lying upon it, something neither alive nor dead. A figure wrapped in burial cloths, but its chest rose and fell with the rhythm of the lullaby. Wires entered its body through the wrappings, merging flesh with metal. Its skull was partially encased in what looked like a data drive, an archaic hard disk fused into bone. This was the source, the interface between ancient ritual and modern code. A voice crackled through the speakers. It wasn't Beta Key, it was Elias Veron. I warned them the program would complete the translation. The melody was never meant to be heard again. You've come too far. The voice sounded fractured, as though coming from multiple sources at once, each one speaking a fraction of a second out of sync. Do you know what the AI really did? He asked. It didn't create. It listened. It found something that was already singing beneath us. The lullaby swelled, louder now, filling every crevice of the chamber. I fell to my knees, clutching my ears. The sound wasn't just in my head, it was in my blood, vibrating through every cell. Through the pain, I saw the monitors flicker. Each screen displayed a single line of text, repeating endlessly. Sequence 5 complete. Reawakening authorized. The body on the altar twitched. Once, twice. Then it sat up. The cloth around its face slipped, revealing a mouth stitched shut, yet I could still hear it singing. The voice didn't pass through air, it resonated through everything, stone, metal, marrow. The words were incomprehensible, but I understood the meaning all the same. It wasn't music. It was a call. The floor trembled as the walls began to split. Behind the cracks, I saw motion, shapes stirring in the burial niches, skeletal remains shuddering as if remembering their final breath. Hundreds of whispering voices joined the melody. The catacombs themselves were singing back. I turned to flee, but the entrance was gone. The tunnel had sealed shut, replaced by solid stone. The monitors burst one by one, spraying glass and sparks as the melody reached its peak. In the chaos, I realized something horrifying. The lullaby wasn't meant to be heard by us. It was meant to wake them. The ancient dead, whose voices had been encoded into stone by centuries of ritual sound. When Sonnet 9 translated the old Roman hymn, it hadn't invented a curse. It had completed one that had been waiting in silence for 2,000 years. A hand reached out of the rubble, thin, bone-pale, trembling, and touched my shoulder. Instantly, I saw visions. Flickering images of ancient priests humming in torchlight, the catacombs filled with sleepers humming their way into eternity, their consciousness preserved in resonance. They had never decayed. They had simply waited. Now, through the AI's translation, their song had found a signal strong enough to reassemble them. The lullaby wasn't music anymore. It was an upload. And the world above, every phone, every speaker, every algorithm that had amplified the song, was part of the process. I tore free, sprinting toward the far end of the chamber, and saw a faint glow ahead, a shaft of daylight filtering through a collapsed section of ceiling. I clawed my way upward, bleeding, breathless, as the chorus behind me grew louder, clearer, almost beautiful. When I emerged into the light, I collapsed among ruins. My ears rang with silence that felt heavier than sound. Below, the catacombs still hummed. The ground quivered gently beneath my palms, as if something massive was moving just under the surface. Then, faintly through the wind, I heard it. The lullaby. Not from my phone, not from a speaker. From the earth itself. Later that night, the world went quiet for exactly 3 minutes. Every streaming platform, every radio frequency, every network device broadcast the same low hum. When it ended, people across the globe reported hearing whispers in the silence that followed, voices singing softly, just under human hearing range. Governments blamed a solar storm. But those who had heard the lullaby before recognized it instantly. It was the same melody, slower, deeper, waiting. I write this now from an undisclosed location, unsure if I'm even still myself. Sometimes I wake up hearing the song in my pulse. Sometimes I catch my reflection mouthing the words before I do. I've learned one last truth, something Elias said before his voice dissolved completely into static. Once you've heard the lullaby, it never really stops. It just waits for silence to fill. If you ever find a file named a_lullaby_final.wave, don't listen to it. Delete it immediately. Or better yet, destroy the device. Because that melody isn't just sound. It's a memory. And it's still looking for someone new to sing it back. Faint sound cue. The AI's lullaby plays one last time, distorted as the screen fades to black. The end.